Hi, my name is Zachariah, and today I'm going to be showing you my stress study for the Basic Science Fair. First, I will give you an introduction, pre-study, post-study, and my conclusion. Introduction. Why I chose this topic. Recently, I've noticed stress has been a commonly spoken subject in both elementary and high schools. A lot of children, including myself, have problems with stress and how to cope with it. As soon as I heard that we are participating in BASIF, I realized that I had to choose a topic. My first idea was a stress study since I was curious to know how stressed people got, the most common causes, habits, and strategies. What is stress? Stress is a mental or physical response caused by being overwhelmed or being under pressure. There are countless symptoms of stress, both mental and physical. So the most common signs of stress are increased heart rate, sweating, dizziness, and headaches. And some mental signs of stress are concentration problems, sleeping problems, anxiety, panic attacks, and sadness. The dangers of stress. Stress has both a mental and physical effect on the body. The hormone cortisol, the stress hormone, is released in response to stress. Studies have shown that this hormone increases blood sugar, blood pressure, blood cholesterol, etc. These effects increase the risk of serious mental illnesses, diabetes, heart disease, heart attack, stroke, and many more. Control. Who I surveyed and why I surveyed them. I wanted to survey grade 8s, 6s, and 4s, and I chose these grades to see if stress is higher in higher grades. I wanted to do as many grades as possible to get a better understanding of this, but I did not want to do too many grades since I may not have been able to get enough responses from each grade. Here are the questions that I asked in my survey, and once I explain my results and analysis, you'll see why I chose these questions. My hypothesis. I predicted that most of the respondents would say that they are sometimes stressed, and almost none will say that they are never stressed, and some people will say that they are always or often stressed. I also predicted that students will say that work is their primary source of stress, and I also predicted that screen time is the most common negative habit. Though there are some questions that I didn't have a hypothesis for since it wouldn't be logical, like the symptoms question and some others. Now I'll be showing you my results and analysis, and note that the identity of the respondents are completely anonymous, and even though I said I was going to survey grade 8s, 6s and 4s, 25 each, I only got to survey 17 grade 8s, which made me a bit stressed, but then my awesome teacher, Mr. Potter, said that it is not about how many responses you get, but it is about how you analyze the data. And personally, I think I got a considerable amount of information from the data I collected. Frequency. For this question, my hypothesis was half correct. I had predicted that most respondents would say that they are sometimes stressed, and most people would say that they are sometimes or often stressed. I didn't know that anyone would say that they are really stressed, and nobody said they are always stressed, which I got correct. And since the most common cause of stress is schoolwork, people that said that they are rarely stressed must be working quite efficiently, or their source of stress wasn't work and it was something else, like COVID, which made them less stressed, which I will discuss later. It would also be a good concern if someone said they were always stressed, since people should do fun activities which make them less stressed. Causes. My hypothesis was correct about the causes of stress. The most significant causes of stress were schoolwork, and other causes like COVID-19 and social situations were much lower. You can also tell by the responses for the strategy question, which I'll explain later. Now, most of the students had work in mind when they were asked what strategies they used, since they used responses like complete the work or get it done, not knowing that the question was supposed to be generic, which is okay. I think if I surveyed grade 8s that didn't go to school, which would be quite hard to find, I would definitely get different answers. Symptoms. I do not have any hypothesis for this question, as I said before, since I cannot think of a logical explanation for it. The most common symptom was anxiety, which is not surprising but also potentially dangerous because it can lead to long-term depression, which can lead to self-harm and maybe even suicide. Negative habits. My hypothesis was not correct. I hypothesized that the most common negative habit would be excessive screen time, but the most common habits were procrastination and fidgeting. Procrastination is just as bad since it leads to stress and anxiety, which fits with the results of the previous question about symptoms. Strategies. Like the symptoms question, I do not have a logical hypothesis for this. The most common strategy was to eliminate the source of stress, and since most of respondents said that work was the primary source of stress, doing the work relieved their stress. Though I think this question was quite dependent um, on the symptoms question. So if not many people said that work was their primary source of stress, I don't think people would say that eliminating the source of stress would have been the strategy since those two fit together. Lastly, I will be talking about mental illness. So even though most respondents answered none to this question, I want to focus on the people that said they had anxiety, ADHD, and insomnia. And I'm going to say again that these responses were completely anonymous. As an example, the person that has social anxiety may have experienced long-term stress, which which turned into anxiety, which turned anxiety disorder or ADHD. Insomnia would be a cause of intense stress. In the example of schoolwork, which is the most common source of stress in my study, he 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 or she thinks that he or she may not get the work on time, and as a result, he or she may not be able to go to sleep. In conclusion, I think I got a considerable amount of information for my responses. I only had 17. Found out that work was his primary source of stress and that getting done eliminated the stress. And overall, I think I found out that students don't have really high levels of stress, but I think it's still a bit high and maybe a bit concerning. And overall my hypothesis was slightly correct, though it depends on the personality of the children. And I think if I got more responses from grade 8s and the other grades that I chose, I would have had much more accurate results. And even though this was quite stressful and I had to go in overdrive to finish this, I still had a bit of fun and learned about the stress in children. And here are my references, here are my acknowledgements, and thanks for listening to my presentation.